How are you getting on? So B2B content tends to be pretty boring on the whole. That's hardly news, you don't need me to tell you that. And a lot of the reasons why it's boring are somewhat just the DNA of the industry itself. It's a bit antiquated, and it's taking time for it to come to the realization that when people are buying technology on behalf of a company, they're still people, they still want to be entertained. It's not all pure rational decision making. But that's not the only reason B2B content is boring. Some of it is self-imposed, and I'd like to talk about that, because I think there's a couple of things that we could do to change our mindset that some people are already doing, and it can make our content a lot less boring, and I think a lot more effective. So let's get into it. So one of the more self-imposed things that we do is in the decisions that we make about format itself. For whatever reason, we've got this really limited and rigid thinking in B2B when it comes to content types. It's almost like a pick list. We go through this process of saying, hey, let's release some content. Let's do a blog post. And actually, you know what we should do? We should make an ebook. And then that'll give us a chance to gate it, and we'll get some leads. And actually, you know what we'll do after that? We could do a webinar, because that'll really ramp up those points and we can get a couple of MQLs on the board. And maybe if we're feeling really out there and we've got some time left over, we'll do a podcast, because that's the new thing that we're doing. And the podcast is a funny example because there's always something is kind of in vogue that the industry has come around to as a new idea, even though podcasts on the whole are a fairly saturated market everywhere, let alone just in B2B. And this has always been something different. I remember when microsites were the new thing, podcasts are the new thing now. And the point is that this list is very rigid. Everyone sort of looks to this pick list and says, which of these is our content going to be? And it's such a limiting way of thinking about content. If you look around at who's doing this better, there are people who are looking to much bigger thinking that is much more just marketing in general, not B2B tech. So you've got people like Lavender who are doing full-on commercials, and there's a number of other companies doing this. You've got people like Dream Data who are doing billboard advertising. You've got Cognism who are doing literal books that they're releasing and selling. And this is just generally thinking bigger about marketing than we do in B2B, which gives us more things to play with than just the set pick list that we have. So the other way that we're really limited is just in thinking about how we express ourselves through these mediums. We tend to look at each other in B2B to get inspiration. Who's doing a good ebook well? Who's doing good webinars? What events have we been to that have been really good? In reality, what we should be thinking about is much bigger than that, well outside of marketing. Just who's doing content well. Because if you look at the content creators, they're the ones who are usually producing the best quality stuff that you can then pull inspiration from into the business world. I'm going to give you a really good example of this. Obed at Hockey Stack has been producing these videos where he's giving a really good point of view on marketing, but doing so while playing video games. And it completely cuts through the noise on LinkedIn. But the funny thing is, if you look over on YouTube, this is something that's been happening for years over there with content. That's not a novel format, but when it's applied to B2B, it is completely transformative and it catches attention. I'm trying to do it by looking to YouTube as well, by looking at the vlog formats that are years old at this stage and trying to create a personal connection with people through that medium. And that's the point. When you're creating content, don't just look at the set list that you think is available to you, and don't even look at content within the industry. Look broader than that, because inspiration comes from people who are creating good content, which includes TV shows, movies, books, posters. Anything that can break through as good content can be repurposed in a way in B2B to be completely unlike anything else. Because here's the other thing. Very few people will look outside of our industry. So if you've got the bravery to do it, if you're willing to try and reach a little bit farther afield, you can cut through the noise like nothing. So yeah, there's a lot about our industry that is boring and will continue to be boring because there is just a legacy perspective about how this industry works. But not all the time. There are some things that are within our control, and if we can cut through, great marketing.